What happens when a CEO's heart beats for the hotel cleaner's laughter? Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today, we've got a truly heartwarming story that takes you behind the glittering lights and non-stop pressure of a millionaire's world. What happens when a CEO's heart beats not for boardrooms or billion-dollar deals, but for the laughter of a hotel cleaner? Trust me, this one might just surprise you. And fair warning, there may be a few moments that make you smile a little too much in public. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you love stories that touch the soul. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from as we share this journey together. So, find a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and get ready to relax. This isn't just another story about wealth. It's about love that breaks all the usual rules. Let's get started. Amidst the towering skyscrapers of New York's financial district, where glass and steel pierced the clouds and lights never dimmed, a young CEO sat quietly by the expansive window of his corner office. From this lofty perch, the city sprawled endlessly, a sea of rushing people, honking cars, and glowing signs promising everything from luxury watches to late-night jazz. To an outsider, it was a world of glamour and success, a place where dreams were made and money flowed like the Hudson River below. But inside, the atmosphere was far from sparkling. The weight of decisions that could make or break millions pressed heavily on his shoulders. Every phone call, every email seemed charged with urgency. The relentless pressure of the business world was a constant hum in the background, one that threatened to drown out the quieter things like love, hope, and the soft whisper of happiness. I remember that evening well. Sitting there, watching the city pulse with life, I felt both immense pride and a gnawing loneliness. Success, they say, comes with a price, and that price was sometimes measured in the moments you missed the dinners skipped, the phone calls unanswered, the intimacy deferred. But that night, something unusual stirred in me, a feeling that despite the chaos, love might just find a way to slip through the cracks. Outside, the dazzling lights painted the sky, blurring the line between day and night. Inside, I realized that beneath the polished surface of the millionaire lifestyle lay a complex dance of desires and fears. Could I balance the relentless ambition with the vulnerability love demands? Or was I destined to sacrifice one for the other? This question isn't just mine. It echoes in boardrooms and penthouses worldwide. Does wealth really bring happiness and love, or does it merely cast a longer shadow over it? In a world that glitters with success, is love an illusion or the most authentic truth we have? That night marked the beginning not just of a new business deal, but of a story that would test every belief I held about power, passion, and the cost of both. And as the city lights flickered like distant stars, I knew this journey would not be easy. But maybe, just maybe, it would be worth it. The charity gala was buzzing with energy chandeliers sparkled overhead, glasses clinked softly, and the murmur of polished conversations filled the grand ballroom. I wasn't exactly in the mood to mingle, yet there I was, dressed to the nines, playing the part expected of a young CEO climbing the ladder of success. It was one of those nights where everyone seemed to know your name, but no one truly knew you. That's when I noticed her, a woman, standing alone by the bar, her eyes scanning the room with a curious mix of confidence and quiet observation. She wasn't flashy like the others, no outrageous jewelry or designer labels screaming for attention. Instead, she wore a simple, elegant black dress that seemed to absorb the soft glow of the lights, and her smile had a subtle warmth that caught me off guard. I thought, here's someone who's not just another face in the crowd. So, naturally, I made my way over part charm, part curiosity. "Do you come to these often?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but secretly hoping she'd say no. I wasn't looking for a business connection that night. She laughed softly, a sound that felt like the first drop of rain after a long drought. "Not really. I prefer meaningful company over empty chatter." That line hit differently. It was like a breath of fresh air amid the usual corporate small talk. As the evening unfolded, we found ourselves drawn into a conversation that felt surprisingly real, discussing everything from dreams to the odd quirks of city life. She mentioned how the city's glitter often masked the loneliness underneath a sentiment I couldn't help but relate to. Meeting her that night made me wonder, could love really bloom in the shadow of relentless ambition? Was it possible to find connection beyond the surface? Or were we all just actors in a high-stakes play? As we parted ways, there was a flicker of something unspoken between us, a promise, maybe, or a challenge. Little did I know, this unexpected encounter would be the spark that ignited a story far more complex than any deal I'd ever negotiated. And so began a dance between two worlds, the relentless pressure of wealth and the fragile hope of love. Our first date was set against the backdrop of a rooftop lounge perched high above the city's restless pulse. The skyline glittered like scattered diamonds, and the air was filled with the mingling scents of jasmine and city smoke, a strange yet intoxicating combination. It was the kind of place where you half expected James Bond to stroll in, but there we were, two imperfect souls trying to make sense of the glitter and the grind. I remember the nervous way I checked my watch, even though the clock seemed irrelevant when you're staring into someone's eyes. She laughed at my subtle tension, teasing me for trying too hard to be the CEO who has it all together. It was refreshing, this glimpse of normalcy in a life that often felt anything but. The conversation flowed easily, at first shared stories about childhood dreams, favorite books, and the strange joy of finding the perfect cup of coffee in a city that never sleeps. But then, as the city lights flickered like distant stars, the tone shifted. There was a quiet honesty in her voice when she said, "It's hard to tell if we're really here for each other or just looking for a break from the chaos." That struck a chord deep inside me. Love in our world wasn't just a romantic ideal. It was tangled in expectations, social pressures, and the constant balancing act between personal desires and public image. Was this genuine connection or just a fleeting escape? I found myself admitting things I rarely shared, my fears of losing myself to the grind, the loneliness behind the boardroom's polished doors, and the silent question haunting every successful person. Can you truly have it all without losing something essential? She nodded thoughtfully, then whispered, "Sometimes love isn't about finding perfection, but accepting the beautiful mess." That night, beneath the neon glow and endless sky, I realized this relationship might not be easy. It would require courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to challenge what success means for both of us. Is love in the upper class really different, or just an illusion shaped by social pressure? It's a question I'd soon face head-on, with consequences neither of us expected. Balancing ambition and love felt like walking a tightrope stretched over a canyon of endless demands. On one hand, the relentless pace of the business world demanded every ounce of my attention, conference calls that ran late into the night, board meetings filled with sharp suits and sharper minds, and decisions that could tip the scales between triumph and disaster. On the other, there was a quiet reminder that beneath all the chaos, there was still room for tenderness and connection. I often caught myself glancing at my phone during what was supposed to be quality time, the screen's cold glow interrupting our conversations. She never complained outright, but I could see the subtle disappointment in her eyes. The tension between us was like a low hum, growing louder with every missed moment. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I found her waiting on the rooftop terrace of my apartment. The city stretched out below us, a tapestry of shimmering lights and restless energy. "You're always chasing something," she said softly. "But what about what you're chasing for?" Her words hit harder than any business critique I'd faced. I realized that in the race for success, I'd been running away from something far more important: love, vulnerability, the simple act of being present. That night, I promised myself to try harder, not just in the boardroom, but in the quiet spaces between. But ambition is a demanding master, and love requires patience and sacrifice. In this world, where does one draw the line? Is love a choice or a trade-off? Between the blinding spotlight of wealth and the shadows of personal sacrifice, I was about to learn how fragile that balance truly is. It was a night I will never forget, not because of the business crisis that loomed over my company, but because of the secret she shared. We were sitting in my office, the city lights casting long shadows against the glass walls, when she finally opened up about the part of her life she'd kept hidden. Her voice trembled just a bit as she told me about a past relationship, one tangled with legal troubles and a family legacy she was trying to escape. It was a world I had no idea existed, so different from the polished veneer we showed the world. I remember feeling a mix of shock and empathy, like the ground beneath me had shifted. This revelation wasn't just a private matter, it had the potential to unravel everything we'd built. I wondered, was this a test of trust, or a sign that our worlds were too different to reconcile? The question echoed loudly in my mind. When love is tested by secrets, will the heart prevail? Her eyes searched mine for judgment, but found only understanding. I didn't want to lose you, she said quietly. And in that moment, I realized love wasn't about perfection or spotless histories. It was about embracing the flaws and choosing to stay. Yet, as the news of my company's financial struggles arrived just hours later, the pressure intensified. Could we survive the storm both in business and in love? That night, the glittering lights outside seemed dimmer, as if the city itself held its breath, waiting to see which way the scales would tip. Rumors began to swirl like a storm around us. The corporate world is unforgiving when whispers start, and soon the social circles we navigated were buzzing with speculation. Was the CEO distracted? Was the company's future in jeopardy? And what about the woman by his side? Was she really who she said she was? I watched as those questions spilled into conversations at board meetings and cocktail parties, the kind where every smile hides a knife and every compliment masks suspicion. The glare of wealth that once seemed like a shield now felt like a spotlight exposing every vulnerability. Her once warm laughter grew quieter, and I caught the way she stiffened when strangers' eyes lingered too long. I knew the pressure wasn't just from the business challenges, but from the public's relentless gaze. In our world, love isn't just a private affair, it's a headline waiting to happen. We both asked ourselves, is love in this glittering world genuine, or just a fragile illusion crafted by social expectations and relentless judgment? Does the constant pressure make us stronger, or does it slowly chip away at the foundation? One evening, we found solace away from the city's noise in a quiet little jazz bar tucked between towering buildings. The soft saxophone notes seemed to wash away the tension, if only for a while. She leaned in and whispered, "Maybe love isn't about surviving the storm, but learning to dance in the rain." It was a thought that lingered as we stepped back into the harsh light of reality, where love and rumors fought a delicate, unpredictable battle. That night, away from the glaring spotlight and endless responsibilities, we found a rare moment of vulnerability. Sitting on the worn leather couch in my apartment, the city lights softened behind the curtains, and the world outside felt miles away. It was one of those rare breaths in a life that rarely allowed pause. I told her about the weight I carried, the constant pressure to perform, the silent fear that beneath the success was a man slowly losing himself. I shared how, despite all the deals and the money, I often felt isolated, caught between roles that left little room for genuine connection. Her hand found mine, warm and steady. "I see you," she said simply. "Not the CEO, but you." It was the first time I felt truly seen, not for the success, but for the person behind it. That night, we talked for hours about fears and dreams, failures and hopes. The vulnerability was uncomfortable but necessary. It was a reminder that beneath the polished exterior, we were just two people trying to find meaning. In those moments, I wondered, does power and money always go hand in hand with loneliness and loss? Or can love be the bridge that connects even the most divided worlds? The answer wasn't clear, but I knew one thing: real love demanded courage to be imperfect, to be open, and to risk everything. And as the city hummed softly outside, I felt a fragile hope stirring, a hope that love could survive, even thrive, amidst the relentless pressure. The pressure hit like a tidal wave. Just as we were beginning to find a fragile rhythm in our relationship, a crisis erupted at the company, unexpected, severe, and relentless. The kind of crisis that keeps you awake at night, staring blankly at the ceiling while your mind races through worst-case scenarios. Investors were nervous, competitors smelled blood, and the media? They were already circling like sharks. Work consumed every waking moment, stretching me thin between emergency meetings, damage control, and strategy sessions. The office lights burned late into the night, and my phone became an extension of my hand. The balance I was desperately trying to build began to crumble. She noticed the change immediately. Our conversations became rushed or postponed, and the warmth that once filled our moments felt replaced by stress and exhaustion. I hated that the one person who mattered most was becoming collateral damage in this battle. One evening, after a particularly brutal day, I found her waiting outside the office with a small coffee and an understanding smile. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly, the city's hum buzzing faintly around us. Her presence was both a comfort and a challenge. Could I lean on someone when the world expected me to be unbreakable? Could love survive the heat of relentless pressure without being burned? That question lingered like the city lights at dawn, bright, persistent, and impossible to ignore. Amid the relentless pressure and mounting crises, it was a ridiculous little moment that brought a much-needed laugh, something absurd and silly enough to cut through the tension like a breath of fresh air. It happened one afternoon when we both desperately needed a break. She had jokingly insisted I try her secret weapon against the brutal city sun, something she called crocodile poop sunscreen. At first, I thought she was pulling my leg, but no, it was real. Apparently, it was a quirky niche product from a tiny boutique she adored, so, against my better judgment, I slathered it on, expecting the worst. Instead, what I got was a hilarious mix of odd smells and a temporary sticky mess that had me grimacing and making ridiculous faces. We both laughed so hard, I thought the glass walls might shatter. That absurd moment was a sharp contrast to the gravity that filled most days. A reminder that beneath all the gloss and glam, life and love still needed humor. It was funny how something so small could shift the mood entirely. For a while, the worries about company losses, rumors, and secrets faded into the background. We found ourselves connected not by grand gestures, but by laughter at the bizarre and unexpected. This got me thinking. Maybe amid the wealth and pressure, the simple, imperfect moments are what truly anchor us. The millionaire lifestyle is filled with champagne and fine dining. Sure, but it's also about finding joy in the ridiculous, the mundane, and the messy. And isn't that what love really is? A beautiful mess worth embracing, even when the world demands perfection. The spotlight of public scrutiny can be both a glow and a glare. As the rumors swirled and our story unfolded, the media descended like a pack, hungry for every detail, every hint of scandal. Paparazzi lurked outside my office building, flashing cameras capturing moments meant to be private. Headlines questioned everything from my leadership to the sincerity of our relationship. Privacy became a scarce luxury. Even casual outings felt like performances, where every smile was analyzed and every word dissected. The pressure of public expectation weighed heavily not just on me, but on her too. The person I cared for was becoming a symbol, a story, rather than simply herself. One afternoon, we escaped to a quiet park bench, away from the flashbulbs and chatter. Surrounded by the rustling leaves and distant laughter of children, she said, "Sometimes I wonder if they're chasing a story, or just trying to understand a love that's different from their own." It made me question, in a world where love becomes public spectacle, can it remain genuine, or does the spotlight distort it into something unrecognizable? The challenge was clear. Protecting love in the glare of fame required a strength I wasn't sure I had. Yet, it was also a test of commitment. Would we hold on when the world was watching? Or would the relentless pressure force us apart? This isn't just a celebrity dilemma. It's a question that echoes for anyone who's ever loved under scrutiny, where the heart's whispers compete with the world's loud demands. Section 11. Our conversations often drifted into deeper waters, where business and emotion collided, and the question echoed again and again. Does wealth really bring happiness and love? It's an open academic debate, one philosophers and psychologists wrestle with, but for me, it was deeply personal. On paper, I had it all: a thriving company, a luxurious lifestyle, and a partner who captivated me. Yet, behind the scenes, there were moments of loneliness that no amount of money could fill. I realized that wealth could build walls as easily as it could build bridges. She once said, "Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy peace of mind or true connection." Her words stuck with me. I wondered, is love in our world more complicated because of money, or does it simply reveal the same challenges everyone faces, just amplified? That night, we debated the idea that financial success could be a double-edged sword in relationships. On one hand, it offers freedom and opportunity. On the other, it brings scrutiny and expectations. It raised a bigger question. In a world obsessed with status and power, can love remain pure? As we sat beneath the stars, I found comfort in the thought that maybe love isn't about escaping challenges, but embracing them together. And that, perhaps, is where true happiness lies, not in wealth, but in shared vulnerability. Between the dazzling lights and the silent struggles, the real question remained, can a millionaire find balance between success and emotion? It was a journey we were only beginning to understand. Disapproval came quietly, at first a glance here, a whispered comment there. Family, the foundation many lean on, sometimes becomes the greatest hurdle. My relatives were cautious, their voices laced with concern over the differences between us. They saw her as an outsider, someone who didn't quite fit into the elite circles we'd grown up in. At family dinners, the air thickened with unspoken judgments. The subtle barbs about background and ambition felt like cracks in the polished facade I tried so hard to maintain. She held her ground with grace, but I saw the weight those moments carried. It made me question whether love could truly conquer the invisible barriers erected by status and expectation. Was the difference in social standing the biggest obstacle for CEOs like me? Could love survive when family loyalty and societal pressure pulled in opposite directions? One evening, as we walked through the quiet streets away from the judgment, she said softly, "Sometimes love means standing together even when the world stands against us." Her words became a shield in the battles ahead. We learned that love in our world wasn't just about passion or connection. It was about resilience, courage, and the willingness to face disapproval head-on. In the glittering towers and sprawling estates, the quiet wars of acceptance are fought daily, and sometimes the heart's greatest victory lies in simply choosing to stay. She wasn't just a partner in love, she was a woman with her own ambitions, dreams that stretched beyond the shadows of my empire. Balancing her career while being linked to a billionaire wasn't easy. The spotlight followed her too, and every success was met with whispers about whether it was her own merit or the influence of our relationship. I admired her for holding on to her identity, refusing to be defined solely by who I was. But I also saw the tightrope she walked daily, juggling boardroom battles and public expectations with the quiet hope that our love could thrive amidst it all. One afternoon, she shared her fears over coffee in a sunlit cafe, the pressure to prove herself not just as the CEO's girlfriend, but as a force in her own right. I realized then that our relationship wasn't just a balancing act for me, but for her too. The challenge was clear. How do you support each other's dreams without letting ambition overshadow affection? Is love a partnership where two stars shine together, or does one have to dim to let the other glow? These questions became the undercurrent of our journey as we sought harmony in a world where personal and professional lines blur. The reality was complicated, but the hope remained that love could be both a sanctuary and a catalyst for growth. As she reached for her dreams, I found myself inspired, wondering if success was truly about climbing alone or about lifting each other higher. Moments of doubt crept in like shadows at dusk. I caught myself wondering if the sacrifices I made for success were worth the cost. Was I losing pieces of myself, my freedom, my happiness, in the relentless pursuit of power? The question gnawed at me, especially when I saw the subtle sadness in her eyes, the quiet loneliness behind her brave smiles. She, too, wrestled with uncertainty. Was love enough to bridge the gap between our worlds? Did the glittering lifestyle mask a deeper emptiness that neither money nor ambition could fill? We shared these doubts late into the night, wrapped in the silence of our apartment, the city's glow flickering beyond the window like distant fireflies. The tension wasn't just about time or attention. It was about the fear that love might be a casualty of success, a price too high to pay. I wondered if we were building something real or just chasing an illusion shaped by desire and circumstance. Yet, despite the doubts, there was a stubborn hope, an ember refusing to be extinguished. Love, after all, is messy and imperfect, a gamble that requires faith even when the odds seem stacked against you. In the delicate balance between ambition and affection, we found ourselves asking, is love a risk worth taking, even when the stakes are everything? And so, with all our fears and hopes tangled together, we pressed on, ready to face whatever came next. When the world felt heavy with expectations and unspoken pressures, we escaped just the two of us on an impromptu getaway. It wasn't about luxury or grandeur. It was about reclaiming a moment of simplicity amid the chaos. We found ourselves in a quiet lakeside cabin, far from the relentless hum of the city, where the only light came from flickering candles and a sky bursting with stars. There, away from emails and endless meetings, we rediscovered parts of each other that had been buried beneath ambition and stress. Morning walks along misty shores, laughter shared over burnt toast, and long conversations that stretched into the night reminded us why we had taken this risk in the first place. It was during those peaceful days that I realized love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, it's about the little things, the warmth of a hand, held in silence, the comfort of shared solitude, and the courage to be vulnerable without fear of judgment. This getaway wasn't just a break from reality. It was a chance to rekindle a flame threatened by the pressures of wealth and success. It was a reminder that beneath the glittering surface, real connection still thrives. In a world that never slows down, sometimes the greatest luxury is simply being present with no distractions, no expectations, just love. The line between business and pleasure blurred on that fateful evening. A high-profile corporate event brought together the city's elite, with champagne flowing and deals whispered in the shadows. It was the kind of gathering where appearances mattered more than anything, and every interaction was a calculated move on the chessboard of power. She accompanied me, her presence both a source of strength and vulnerability. Amid the glittering crowd, we tried to carve out moments that were ours alone, but the weight of expectations hovered like a storm cloud. As we navigated conversations filled with veiled compliments and subtle rivalries, I caught glimpses of tension flickering in her eyes. The night took an unexpected turn when a competitor, with a reputation for ruthless tactics, approached us with a thinly veiled challenge. The tension between our professional worlds collided with our personal lives, forcing us to navigate a delicate dance of diplomacy and defense. In that moment, I realized how deeply intertwined love and power had become. Could our relationship withstand the pressures of a world where every alliance and every whisper mattered? Was it possible to keep the personal sacred in a realm ruled by strategy? As the night wore on, I found myself asking, when love is tested by the collision of business and pleasure, will it emerge stronger or fracture under the strain? The answer would come not just in words, but in choices we were forced to make in the days ahead. Trust, once solid and unwavering, suddenly felt fragile, like a glass sculpture teetering on the edge of a table. The unexpected betrayal came not from a rival or the media, but from within our circle. Someone we both had counted on had shared a confidential secret, shaking the foundation of what we had built together. I remember the moment I found out the crushing mix of disbelief and anger, the silent questions racing through my mind. How could someone betray not just me, but us? The sense of violation cut deeper than any business setback. She felt it too, the sting of doubt that crept into her eyes, the guardedness in her smile. It was a harsh reminder that in a world fueled by ambition and competition, even love can become a battlefield. We faced a choice. Let suspicion poison our bond, or confront the pain with honesty and strength. That night, we sat in silence, the air thick with unspoken fears. Slowly, we began to unravel the layers of hurt, laying bare the vulnerabilities we had kept hidden. In that painful process, I realized something profound: trust isn't a guarantee. It's a continuous act of courage and forgiveness. And when love is truly tested, it's not the absence of betrayal that defines it, but the willingness to heal and move forward together. The road ahead was uncertain, but the decision to fight for what we had made all the difference. Forgiveness became our battleground and sanctuary all at once. The wound of betrayal was raw, but we chose not to let it fester into resentment. Instead, we faced it head-on, peeling back the layers of hurt with slow, deliberate care. One evening, after a long, quiet conversation, she reached out, her voice steady but vulnerable. "I want to believe in us," she said. Those simple words held the weight of everything we'd been through. Forgiveness wasn't easy. It meant accepting imperfection, not just in the other, but in ourselves. We both had to confront fears of abandonment, doubts about trust, and the shadows of past mistakes. Yet, in that process, something beautiful emerged, a deeper understanding and a renewed commitment. Love, I learned, isn't about flawless perfection or a life free of pain. It's about the grace to heal wounds and the courage to keep choosing each other, even when the road is rocky. In the quiet aftermath, as the city lights flickered outside, we held on to that fragile hope. The storm hadn't passed, but together, we were learning how to weather it. And in that shared strength, I found a glimpse of something far more valuable than wealth resilience born from love's hardest tests. Behind the polished smiles and sparkling parties, social masks often hid the real struggles. In our world, appearances were everything, an unspoken rule that demanded perfection at all times. But beneath the surface, both she and I grappled with fears and doubts that rarely saw the light of day. I remember one evening at a lavish gala, where the crowd's laughter felt hollow and the conversations rehearsed. We stood together, side by side, yet I could see the distance in her eyes. The mask we wore to the world was beginning to crack. It struck me how exhausting it was to live under the constant pressure of maintaining an image. Success wasn't just about wealth or power, it was about the relentless performance of confidence and control. But behind the curtains, vulnerability whispered. We began to ask ourselves, what price do we pay for keeping up appearances? And at what point does the mask become a prison? That night, away from the crowd's eyes, she confided in me that sometimes the most intimate moments were those when we dropped the act and simply allowed ourselves to be flawed and real. In a world obsessed with perfection, perhaps love's truest form is found in authenticity, the courage to show the parts we usually hide. And maybe, just maybe, that's where freedom begins. The question hung in the air like a whispered debate at a crowded dinner party. Is love in the upper class real, or just an illusion crafted by social pressure? We often found ourselves circling this idea, especially when the spotlight felt heaviest and the expectations most suffocating. Our world, filled with gala invitations and glossy magazine covers, sometimes felt like a stage set for performances rather than genuine connections. Was the laughter authentic or a rehearsed act? Were the whispered promises heartfelt or just another move in the game of status and power? She once asked me, when everyone watches, can love still be private, or does it become a story written by others? That question resonated deeply. I realized that the very glamour that attracted us could also distort the truth, creating an illusion where love was filtered through filters of wealth and expectation. Yet, despite the doubts, we chose to believe in the possibility of something real beneath the glitter. It was a quiet rebellion against the scripts written by society, a commitment to authenticity even when it was hard. In a world where appearances often overshadow reality, love's true test is whether it can survive the glare and remain true to itself. And so, amid the illusions, we held on to hope that love, even in the upper class, could be genuine, raw, and beautifully imperfect. A quiet Sunday morning offered a rare reprieve from the relentless pace of our lives. The city outside was slow to wake. The usual cacophony softened to gentle murmurs of distant traffic and early birdsong. In our apartment, sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting warm patterns on the hardwood floor. We sat together, coffee cups steaming in hand, not rushing or planning, just being. No phones buzzed, no meetings loomed. For once, the weight of wealth and expectation lifted, replaced by the simple comfort of presence. She shared stories from her childhood moments of laughter and mischief, far removed from the glittering towers we now inhabited. I found myself listening, not as a CEO, but as a man rediscovering the beauty of the ordinary. In that stillness, I realized how rare such moments were, a break from the facade, a glimpse of real life beneath the layers of success and ambition. It was a reminder that love thrives not only in grand gestures or luxurious settings, but in the quiet, everyday moments where two souls simply share space and time. Does true connection require drama and spectacle, or is it found in the calm between storms? That Sunday morning, with sunlight and shared silence, the answer felt clear. Love is most real when it's simple, unadorned, and deeply felt. Money has a strange way of coloring every aspect of life, especially love. We talked often about how finances shape our happiness and emotional security, not just in the obvious ways, but in subtle, unspoken tensions that weave through our days. She once told me, money can buy experiences, but it can't guarantee peace of mind. I nodded, understanding that while wealth opened doors, it didn't always open hearts. The safety net it provided sometimes felt like a cage, creating walls where connection should have been. I learned that in relationships like ours, the true challenge isn't how much you have, but how you use it. Does money bring freedom or fear? Does it build bridges or barriers? These questions didn't have easy answers, but they shaped how we navigated our world. One evening, as we sat overlooking the city, I realized that love's value isn't measured in dollars, but in trust, respect, and shared dreams. The luxury car outside and the penthouse view mattered less than the moments when we could be vulnerable and authentic. In a life filled with financial success, the quest for happiness felt less about accumulation and more about connection. And so, we continued to ask ourselves, how do you find joy when the stakes are high and the world expects so much? It's a journey without a map, but one we chose to travel together. Amid the chaos of high-stakes deals and relentless pressure, it was a small, unexpected gesture that reminded me what truly mattered. One afternoon, she surprised me with a simple handwritten note. Tucked inside my briefcase, a few words of encouragement and a reminder that I wasn't alone in the storm. It wasn't the kind of grand romantic gesture you see in movies, but it held a weight far greater than any public display. That tiny scrap of paper became a lifeline on days when the world felt overwhelming. It made me think about how love often lives in the details, the quiet acts of kindness that go unnoticed by the world, but speak volumes to the heart. In the whirlwind of success, it's easy to overlook these moments, but they are the threads that weave a relationship strong. She once said, "The best gifts aren't the ones wrapped in paper, but the ones wrapped in thought." That thoughtfulness grounded us, a reminder that beneath the glitter and the grind, love thrives in connection and care. It was a lesson I carried with me, realizing that the richest moments weren't those spent in boardrooms or luxury suites, but in the simple, thoughtful exchanges that kept us connected. And sometimes, that's all you need to keep love alive. Despite the crowded rooms and constant company, loneliness was an ever-present shadow. It's a strange paradox of the millionaire's life surrounded by people, yet often profoundly isolated. The relentless demands of success create invisible barriers that even the closest partners can struggle to cross. I remember sitting alone in my office late at night, the city's glow a distant blur through the window. The silence was thick, filled with questions I dared not voice. Was this the life I wanted? Could love truly flourish amid such isolation? She shared similar feelings, confessing that despite being seen by so many, she sometimes felt like a ghost present but unseen. Loneliness wasn't just physical, it was emotional, the kind that creeps in when you can't share your true self without fear of judgment or misunderstanding. We began to understand that love in this world wasn't just about passion or romance. It was about breaking through those walls of solitude and finding genuine connection. It raised a deeper question. Does power and money inevitably come with loneliness and loss? Or can love be the light that breaks through the darkness? We held on to the hope that together we could bridge the gap, turn isolation into intimacy, and loneliness into belonging. Just as we were beginning to feel the fragile threads of connection strengthen, a crisis struck the company with ruthless force. The financial downturn was sudden, a sharp, unforgiving blow that sent shockwaves through every department and boardroom. Investors panicked, employees braced for uncertainty, and I found myself at the epicenter of a storm I hadn't anticipated. The weight of responsibility pressed harder than ever. Each decision carried the potential to save or sink the empire I had spent years building. The late nights multiplied, filled with tense calls, strategy meetings, and endless damage control. Our personal lives took a back seat as the company's survival became the sole focus. The pressure seeped into every conversation, every glance, turning what should have been moments of respite into reminders of looming failure. She stood by me through it all, a steadfast presence in the chaos, but I saw the toll it took on her too, the worry, the exhaustion, and the fear of losing not just a business, but the life we were trying to build together. That crisis tested everything: our trust, our resilience, and the fragile balance between success and love. In the heat of battle, I wondered, could love endure when everything else was at stake? The question we grappled with often felt like a riddle with no clear answer. Is love a choice or a trade-off? In the rare, quiet moments between crises and celebrations, we debated whether the sacrifices we made were voluntary acts of devotion or reluctant compromises demanded by the weight of our worlds. I thought about the long hours I spent away from her, the dinners missed, the texts unanswered. Was this the price of ambition or a conscious decision to prioritize love? She wrestled with the same dilemma, balancing her own dreams against the reality of being tied to a man whose life was ruled by deadlines and dollars. We wondered, could love survive if it was constantly negotiating with ambition? Or was it doomed to become just another item on a ledger of sacrifices? One evening, beneath the soft glow of city lights, she said, "Maybe love isn't just about giving up something, but about choosing what's truly worth holding on to." Those words lingered, a gentle challenge to redefine what success meant, not just in business, but in the heart. In our story, love wasn't simply a reward or a casualty of success. It was an ongoing choice, a delicate balance we had to nurture every day. And in that choice lay both risk and hope. Then, like a ghost from the past, an old flame reappeared, unexpected and unwelcome. She wasn't just a memory. She was a reminder of chapters I thought were closed, a complication no one needed but everyone feared. Her arrival stirred jealousy and insecurity, emotions I hadn't fully anticipated. The whispers in the halls grew louder, and I felt the fragile trust between us wobble under the weight of old wounds reopened. I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the silent questions she didn't voice, but which hung heavy in the space between us. Was this a test of our bond, or a signal that some pasts never truly fade? Navigating this storm required more than just reassurances. It demanded honesty, courage, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. We talked long into the night, laying bare fears and affirming commitments, reminding each other why we chose this path despite the obstacles. The experience made me question, can love withstand the shadows of past relationships, or are some ghosts meant to haunt forever? For us, it was another trial by fire, one that would either strengthen the bond or reveal its cracks. And as always, the choice was ours to make. The media storm was relentless. Tabloids and online outlets spun stories faster than we could respond, twisting our private moments into public spectacle. Every misstep was magnified, every smile scrutinized for hidden meaning. Our love, once a quiet refuge, became a headline, dissected and debated by strangers. We learned quickly that controlling the narrative was impossible. Instead, we had to guard our truth fiercely, relying on each other to weather the invasive questions and relentless gossip. One afternoon, escaping to a secluded cafe, she whispered, "They want a story, but we have a life." It was a small act of rebellion, a reminder that our connection was real, beyond the lenses and headlines. Yet, the pressure to maintain appearances remained a constant challenge. The line between privacy and publicity blurred, forcing us to redefine what it meant to be together in a world hungry for drama. In this era of relentless exposure, love's greatest defense is often discretion and trust. And through it all, we held on to the hope that the truth of our bond would outlast the fleeting gossip. In the whirlwind of high-profile events and public scrutiny, it was the simple language of touch that became our refuge. Amid the noise and expectations, a hand held, a reassuring squeeze, or a quiet embrace spoke volumes beyond words. I recall one evening, after a grueling day of negotiations and media frenzy, when we found ourselves alone in a quiet corner of a bustling restaurant. The world outside might have been watching, but in that moment, it was just us. Her fingers brushed mine, a silent promise of support and connection. Physical closeness became our unspoken anchor, a way to navigate the storms without needing to say everything aloud. It was in these small gestures that I felt the deepest reassurance proof that despite the chaos, we were still united. Love, I realized, isn't just in grand declarations or sweeping moments. Sometimes, it's found in the softness of a touch that says, "I'm here." In a world where every move is analyzed, these intimate moments were sacred, a quiet rebellion against the relentless glare. And they reminded me that even amid the highest peaks of success, the human heart craves connection above all else. We often pondered the paradox of power and loneliness, how, in the glittering halls of success, isolation often lingers like a shadow. It's an irony that wealth and influence, while opening doors, can also build invisible walls around the heart. There were nights when I found myself alone in the penthouse, the city's heartbeat muffled by thick glass. The silence was deafening, filled with questions that no business deal could answer. Was this the cost of climbing so high? Did the trappings of power inevitably lead to solitude? She shared these feelings too, the sense that despite the company and the accolades, a quiet loneliness persisted. It wasn't about physical presence, but emotional connection, something more elusive in a world of status and appearances. We debated whether power was a prison or a privilege. Could love be the key that unlocks those walls, or is it just another casualty in the relentless pursuit of success? This philosophical tension became a thread running through our story, a reminder that beneath the surface, even the most dazzling lives wrestle with the same fundamental human needs. And perhaps the true measure of success isn't just wealth or influence, but the courage to seek connection despite the loneliness. Shared dreams became our secret refuge, a place where ambition and affection intertwined without conflict. In quiet moments, away from the glare of the city and the pressures of the boardroom, we dared to envision a future that was more than just business deals and social appearances. We talked about building something together, not just a company or a brand, but a life defined by mutual support and understanding. It was a vision filled with hope, grounded in the reality of our struggles, but reaching for something better. She spoke of creating spaces where creativity and compassion could flourish. I shared my desire for balance, a life where success didn't come at the cost of happiness. These dreams weren't grandiose or flashy. They were simple, yet profound, a testament to the power of love to inspire growth beyond the individual. In a world obsessed with status, our shared vision was a quiet rebellion, a reminder that even amid wealth and pressure, it's possible to build something lasting. And as we held onto these dreams, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just as a CEO, but as a partner walking toward an unknown but hopeful future. Family ties, with their deep roots and tangled branches, often added complexity to our journey. Their expectations and opinions sometimes felt like invisible hands, pulling us in directions neither of us wanted to go. Old traditions clashed with new realities, and the pressures of legacy weighed heavily on both sides. I faced subtle questions about whether she was truly the right fit, not just socially, but culturally. My family's concern wasn't always voiced directly, but the undercurrents were unmistakable. Meanwhile, she felt the sting of feeling like an outsider, striving to be accepted without losing herself. We realized that love in this context wasn't just about us. It was about navigating history, loyalty, and the delicate balance between honoring the past and forging a new path. These family dynamics tested our resolve, forcing us to communicate more openly and stand united against external pressures. In the glittering towers and sprawling estates, family expectations can be both a foundation and a hurdle. We learned that love requires patience and diplomacy, not just passion. And through it all, we held fast to the belief that together we could write our own story. One night, the tension between us finally reached a breaking point. What began as a minor disagreement quickly escalated into a heated argument that exposed all the fears and frustrations we had been suppressing. The penthouse, usually a sanctuary, felt claustrophobic as harsh words filled the space. I remember the sting of her accusations that I prioritized my company over us, that I was emotionally distant. She, in turn, confessed feeling unseen and unheard in a world obsessed with success. Our vulnerabilities collided, raw and unfiltered. Despite the pain, that night marked a turning point. We confronted truths we had avoided, acknowledging that love wasn't always easy or perfect. Sometimes, it required facing discomfort head-on. In the aftermath, as the city lights flickered through the windows, we found a fragile peace. The argument hadn't broken us. It had forced us to see each other more clearly. Love, I realized, isn't just about harmony. It's about the courage to fight for each other, even when the fight feels messy and painful. And sometimes, it's in those moments of reckoning that the strongest bonds are forged. After the storm of our argument, laughter became our unexpected healer. It's funny how, amidst the weight of high stakes and heavy emotions, a simple joke or a shared silly moment can lighten the darkest mood. One evening, still bruised from our heated words, she caught me off guard with an absurd impersonation of a CEO, giving a dramatic speech, complete with exaggerated hand gestures and overly serious expressions. I couldn't help but burst out laughing, the sound breaking through the tension like sunlight through clouds. That laughter reminded me that love doesn't have to be solemn all the time. Humor is a bridge, a way to reconnect when words fail. It's the spark that reignites warmth and reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously. In a world obsessed with perfection and appearances, finding moments of genuine joy became a radical act, a way to reclaim ourselves and each other. And so, with smiles and shared laughter, we found our way back from the edge, learning that sometimes the best remedy for pain is a good laugh together. The difference in status loomed over us like a silent barrier, an obstacle that neither of us could ignore. In the world of CEOs and high society, where pedigree often dictates acceptance, the question wasn't just about love, it was about whether two people from different worlds could truly bridge that gap. Family gatherings, social events, and even casual conversations often reminded us of the divide. Sometimes it felt like we were speaking different languages, bound by different codes of conduct and expectations. The unspoken question hung in the air. Could love alone overcome this divide, or was status the insurmountable wall? We talked openly about this challenge, acknowledging the tension it created. She wondered if her background would always cast a shadow on our relationship, while I grappled with the pressure to conform to traditions I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. It was a test of not just affection, but of courage. Courage to challenge norms, to stand firm in the face of judgment, and to redefine what truly mattered. In a world where status often dictates worth, we chose to value connection over convention, love over lineage. And in that choice, we found strength. In the quiet aftermath of so many trials, we found a moment to reaffirm our commitment, a small but powerful gesture that spoke louder than words. It wasn't a grand proposal or a public declaration, but something intimate, a symbol of the bond we had forged through struggle and resilience. She gave me a simple engraved token, a reminder that despite the chaos, we were choosing each other day after day. That tiny symbol carried the weight of our shared journey, the late nights, the doubts, the laughter, and the tears. It was a turning point, a moment where love felt less fragile and more unbreakable. We both understood that commitment wasn't just about promises made, but promises kept, even when the world pushed against us. In that quiet exchange, I felt a profound sense of peace. The pressures of wealth and success hadn't vanished, but they no longer defined us. Instead, our connection became the anchor amid the storm. Sometimes, love's greatest power lies in the small, consistent acts of choosing each other over and over again. We often found ourselves tangled in a philosophical debate. Can a millionaire truly find balance between the demands of success and the needs of the heart? It's a question that doesn't have a simple answer, especially when the stakes are sky high and the expectations endless. Our lives were a constant juggling act, board meetings and romantic dinners, public appearances, and private moments. Sometimes it felt like walking a tightrope with no safety net. The allure of wealth promised freedom, yet often delivered constraint. I shared with her my fears of losing myself entirely to ambition, while she confided her worries about being overshadowed by a world that revered power above all else. Together, we searched for equilibrium, a way to hold on to love without sacrificing dreams, and to pursue success without losing connection. It wasn't easy. The balance shifted daily, sometimes moment to moment. but we learned that acknowledging the struggle was part of the journey. Between flashing city lights and quiet, candlelit nights, our story was a testament to the ongoing quest for harmony in a life filled with extremes. And perhaps that pursuit is where true strength and love are born. Amid the whirlwind of our high-profile lives, we occasionally sought refuge in the ordinary, trying everyday activities that offered a glimpse of normalcy rarely available to us. Grocery runs, cooking simple meals, or wandering local parks became precious escapes from the relentless pace and expectations. I remember one afternoon when we decided to explore a nearby farmer's market. The colorful stalls, the scent of fresh herbs and baked bread, and the casual chatter of neighbors created a world so different from boardrooms and gala events. For a moment, it felt like we were just two people, not a CEO, and his partner rediscovering joy in the simple things. These moments reminded us that beneath the glitter and the grind, life's real beauty often lies in the mundane. The crunch of a fresh apple, the warmth of shared laughter over a burnt dinner, these were the threads weaving us closer together. In a world obsessed with perfection and status, these simple acts were revolutionary. They grounded us, making love tangible beyond the headlines and high stakes. And in those quiet, everyday moments, I felt the truest connection, unpolished, imperfect, and deeply real. Doubt is a quiet intruder. It sneaks in on the edges of your mind, whispering fears when you least expect it. I remember nights lying awake, haunted by questions about whether I was enough as a leader, a partner, a man. The weight of expectations sometimes felt unbearable. She too wrestled with insecurities, wondering if our love could withstand the pressures that constantly surrounded us. Would the relentless demands of wealth and status eventually erode the bond we fought so hard to build? These moments of uncertainty tested us deeply. They challenged the foundations of trust and faith we had painstakingly constructed. But in facing those fears, we found strength. We learned that doubt isn't the end, but a part of the journey, a reminder to nurture the connection and communicate openly. It's easy to believe that success shields you from vulnerability, but the truth is, it exposes it in new ways. And in that exposure, we found an opportunity to grow individually and together. Trust, fragile and precious, became the foundation we rebuilt after the storms. After betrayal and doubt had shaken us, we realized that trust isn't a given, it's earned and renewed every day. We made a conscious choice to be open, to share not just our successes, but our fears and imperfections. It was uncomfortable, sometimes painful, but necessary. In the vulnerability, we found a deeper connection, one that wasn't dependent on flawless facades. I remember moments when a simple look or a gentle touch conveyed more than words ever could, a silent agreement that we were in this together, come what may. Rebuilding trust was a process, a journey of small steps and big leaps, requiring patience and grace. It taught me that love isn't just about passion or excitement, it's about commitment, forgiveness, and the willingness to stand firm through the hardest trials. And in that steady foundation, we discovered a love that could weather any storm. When material things began to test our love, the true challenge emerged. Gifts, luxury, and wealth, once symbols of success and affection, started to feel like double-edged swords. Were these tokens genuine expressions of care, or barriers hiding deeper disconnects? There were moments when the pressure of maintaining appearances clouded our intimacy. I questioned whether love was being overshadowed by possessions and status, if our hearts were getting lost in the glitter. She confronted me gently one night, saying, "When everything is wrapped in gold, sometimes it's hard to see what's real." Her words stayed with me, reminding me that love is about substance, not shine. We had to peel back the layers of luxury and distraction to reconnect with the raw, imperfect truth of our feelings. This journey taught us that material things can never replace genuine connection. And when love is tested by what money can buy, it's the heart's resilience that decides the outcome. In the end, love isn't about what you have, it's about who you choose to be with. For a brief moment, success and love aligned perfectly, an unexpected triumph in the midst of chaos. A major deal closed successfully, lifting the weight that had pressed on my shoulders for months. That evening, we celebrated quietly in our apartment, away from the flashing cameras and endless expectations. The champagne sparkled as we toasted not just business, but us. In that rare, unguarded moment, the pressures melted away, and I saw her smile with a lightness that had been missing. It was proof that beneath the high stakes and relentless grind, joy could still find its place. We danced slowly to soft music, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows like distant stars. It felt less like a victory and more like a gift, a reminder of why we kept fighting for this love. That night, I realized that success isn't just measured by numbers or status, but by the moments we share, the quiet celebrations that reaffirm what truly matters. In the unpredictable journey of wealth and passion, such moments are precious and rare. And when they come, they shine brighter than any city light. With the storm behind us and hope rekindled, we began to look toward the future not just as individuals, but as partners planning a life together. The conversation shifted from crisis management to dreams, to questions of where and how we wanted to build our shared world. We talked about the kind of home that felt like a sanctuary, a place where ambition didn't overshadow peace. We dreamed of mornings without rush, dinners filled with laughter, and a balance that allowed both career and connection to flourish. Planning wasn't just about logistics, it was about defining priorities and values. How do you build a life that honors both success and love? Can you design a future where neither is sacrificed? It was daunting, but exhilarating. Each plan was a promise to ourselves and each other to nurture the fragile balance we had fought so hard to achieve. In that quiet hope, I saw a new kind of success, one measured not by wealth, but by happiness and shared purpose. And in planning our future, we found the courage to believe in a love that could last beyond the glittering lights. Alone in the quiet moments, I often found myself reflecting on the journey we'd traveled. The city's frenetic energy felt distant, replaced by a stillness that invited contemplation. It was in these pauses that the weight of the past and the promise of the future intertwined. I thought about the highs and lows, the glamour and the struggles, the triumphs and the betrayals. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry of our story, woven with love and resilience. She too found solace in reflection, often sharing her thoughts about how far we'd come and what lay ahead. These moments of solitude weren't about isolation, but about understanding ourselves and each other more deeply. In the silence, I asked myself the questions that no one else could answer. Was love enough? Could we sustain the balance we sought? Would the pressures fade or simply evolve? The answers were uncertain, but the hope remained steadfast. Reflection brought clarity and peace, a gentle reminder that the journey itself held meaning beyond the destination. And as the city lights twinkled softly, I felt ready to face whatever the next chapter would bring together. As the story draws to a close, the glittering lights of the city no longer dazzle as they once did. The relentless pressure has softened, leaving behind a quieter, more profound glow, the light of love that has weathered storms and emerged stronger. We stand not as perfect beings, but as partners shaped by challenges and choice, bound by a commitment that transcends wealth and status. The journey has been messy, beautiful, and deeply human. In the final moments, I see that love in this world is neither a fairy tale nor an illusion, but a living, breathing force, imperfect, resilient, and utterly worth the fight. The skyscrapers still reach for the sky, but below them, in the spaces between ambition and affection, love remains the true treasure. And no matter how this journey turns out, one thing is certain: love is always the light that lights the way ahead. In the quiet moments after the storm, there's a gentle stillness that settles, a softness in the air that invites us to breathe deeply and feel. The world doesn't always offer clear answers, but it gives us the space to hope, to heal, and to begin again. Love, in its simplest form, is found in the laughter shared across unlikely divides. It's in the small, unnoticed moments, the way a smile can bridge worlds, the way a heart listens when words fall short. Sometimes, the most unexpected connections teach us the most profound lessons about kindness and courage. The path isn't always smooth. There are stumbles, hesitations, and fears, but there is also resilience, a quiet strength that grows when we choose to believe in each other and ourselves. So, hold on to that hope. Let it be a light in the dark and a whisper of warmth in the cold. No matter where life takes you, know that love's gentle pulse is always within reach, ready to guide you home. And as the city's hum fades into a soft silence, listen closely. Can you hear it? The tender heartbeat of a story still unfolding, just for you.